Welcome everyone to our ongoing classes, lectures on Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, the 7 universal Noachide commandments. We are currently in the middle of studying a section from the Encyclopedia Talmudit, the Talmudical Encyclopedia, Krach Vav. We are in volume 6, and the entry is Ger Toshav. And we're in the middle. We're up to the subdivision, if you will, of Shmiras Shabbos. A Ger Toshav with regards to observing or keeping the Shabbos, the Jewish Sabbath. And that would bring us to page, or I should say column, Reish Tzadik Zayin, 297. In the middle of the column, it says, Hey, which means this is the 5th section in Ger Toshav, Bishmiras Shabbos, with regards to keeping Shabbos. Ger Toshav, Imhu Asur Lasis Melacha B'Shabbos, Nechliku B'Y Tanoim. Whether a Ger Toshav is forbidden to do Melacha. Melacha is labor or work which are forbidden for a Jew to do on Shabbos, from nightfall on Friday until the Sabbath ends at nightfall on Saturday night. There are many things, a long list of things, which are biblically prohibited for a Jew to do. And those are called milacha, or in the plural, milachos, labor, specific types of labor. There are 39 general categories, and each one of them has many details or subcategories which fall under that category, and they're all biblically forbidden. And in addition to that, rabbinically forbidden, there are many, many, many things. So, question is a Ger Toshav permitted to do melacha on Shabbos? So it's actually a dispute between Tanoim. Tanoim are the Mishnaic sages. Yesh Imrim, there are those that say, Ger Toshav mutar lasis melacha b'Shabbos la'atzmoi, ki Yisrael b'choyloi shel moyed. That a Ger Toshav is permitted to do melacha for himself, and the way they explain it and the way they compare it is just like a Yisrael, a regular Jew, an Israelite, may work on Choil HaMoyed. Those are the intermediate days of the festivals of Sukkot and Pesach, respectively. In between the first and last festive days, there are days which are still Passover, they're still Sukkot. However, they are not as restricted as far as doing melacha is concerned. There are still things that one is not permitted to do, but nowhere nearly as restrictive as the Yom Tov, the festive days themselves. And explains, what does that mean that we're comparing a Ger Toshav on Shabbos to a Yisrael on Chol HaMoyed? Ma Yisrael, just as a Jew, b'choilo shel moyed, on these intermediate days, megabev melaket me'al pnei asodeh, is permitted to gather from the field, v'asur b'chol meleches asodeh, and is forbidden to do any melacha, any labor of the field, such as sowing, plowing, harvesting. In other words, whatever's out there in the field already, he's allowed to go out to the field and bring it in and gather it. But he cannot do any of the, so to say, real melachos in the field. Av Ger Toshav b'Shabbos kain. So too, a Ger Toshav on Shabbos is the same way. So in other words, according to this first opinion, there are certain restrictions that the Ger Toshav has on Shabbos. You can't compare his refraining from malacha to a Jew's refraining from malacha on Shabbos, but he does have certain restrictions. It's a different day than every other day for him, and he's got to refrain from things that a Jew has to refrain from in the field on Chol Hamoed. The Yeshoimim, there are those that say, this is the second opinion, Mutar loy lasois masha mutar li Yisrael b'Yom Tov, that he's actually permitted to do whatever a Jew is permitted to do on Yom Tov, on the festive days themselves, not the intermediate days. And he explains, Ma Yisrael, just as a Jew, b'Yom Tov, oife umevashel v'asur b'chol malacha, just as the Jew on Yom Tov may bake and cook, and is forbidden to do all melacha other than that. Other than for the need of food, on Yom Tov, it's pretty much the same as Shabbos. Af Ger Toshav b'Shabbos kain. So too the Ger Toshav is the same. Shenemar, as the verse says, with regards to Shabbos, V'nafesh, and shall rest, ben amascha, the son of your maidservant, v'hager, and the ger. Now, as mentioned in a previous class, when the Torah uses the expression ger, so you have to look at the context in which it's being used. Sometimes it's very clear and obvious that it's what's commonly called a ger, or in rabbinic literature, the ger tzedek, which basically means a non-Jew who converted completely and became a Jew. A convert, a ger. Other times, when the verse uses the term ger, it cannot mean that, and this is one example, and it surely means the Ger Toshav. And for that we have the oral tradition to point out to us when the term ger in the verse means a ger tzedek, a convert, and when it means a ger toshav. For here it says to keep Shabbos, and it says, and see to it that the son of your maidservant and the ger. The ger is a Jew. Obviously has to keep Shabbos. It does not repeat by every mitzvah and the ger. Otherwise the Torah would have to say it 613 times. Each time there is a commandment, whether it's a positive one or whether it's a negative one, it would always have to say, and the ger. No. There's a verse that states that someone who converts is absolutely Jewish and has all the obligations and the requirements of a regular Jew. So therefore, when it comes to the observance of Shabbos, or to refrain from doing melacha, and it says, and the ger, this is referring to the ger toshav. But if that's the case, you may ask, wait a second. That means from that verse, it sounds like the ger toshav should keep Shabbos just like a Jew, because it says, v'nafesh, and shall rest, not only you, but the son of your maidservant, and the ger, and that's ger toshav. But then he explains, v'loy nemar boy, Ella, it does not say, with regard to the Ger Toshav, other than sheyinafesh, v'loy shvisa. There's a different term here used. Shvisa means to refrain, to sit and rest. V'nafesh is a different term for resting. And therefore, it is not telling us that he has to refrain from the exact same amount and same melachas as the Jew. But there is many things that he has to refrain from. So what would be the difference? So according to this opinion, whatever a Jew may do on Yom Tov, the Ger Toshav can do on Shabbos. And whatever the Jew cannot do on Yom Tov, the Ger Toshav cannot do on Shabbos. And that's called v'nafesh. Meaning, this is much different, extremely different than the first opinion. To compare the Yom Tov observance to a Ger Toshav's Shabbos is by far much stricter and much more restraining than comparing the Chol HaMoyed intermediate days observance to the Shabbos of a Ger Toshav. So basically, just for clarity's sake, allow me to clarify the different types of days. This, now, what I'm going to say now only applies to Jews clearly before we get into further the disputes here. As far as the Jew is concerned, this is super clear, there's no dispute. There's basically Shabbos, which comes about every single week. Comes around every week, Friday night, Saturday, the 7th day of the week, Shabbos. Yom Kippur, once a year, that's called the Shabbos of Shabboses, Shabbos Shabbosain. Otherwise, every single week, Shabbos, many restrictions, many things are forbidden. If you've ever seen an observant Jew on Shabbos, you have an idea of what I'm talking about. You cannot imagine. You just cannot imagine until you actually have experienced, have witnessed, have spent an entire Shabbos with a Torah observant Jew or Jewish family. I mean, I'll just give you an example of certain things which people find difficult to even relate to. And not to mix at all with let's say, the Amish or something. On Shabbos, we do not even turn on a light by just hitting the switch, by just flicking the switch on or off. We don't do that. On Shabbos, it's forbidden to cut toilet paper. We have pre-cut toilet paper. On Shabbos, we don't walk outside in a public domain while carrying anything in our pockets. You can't have a key or a tissue in your pocket when going out in a public domain. And those are just a few examples. It's actually a very, very wonderful day. And it's a day of connecting to Hashem, to God. It's a very spiritual day. And it's a day that basically we detach ourselves from the mundane world. So we don't use in the conventional way electricity and appliances. We do benefit from them. We do have the refrigerator running and we do have the lights on. Either we keep them on or there's a timer. So we are using them, but we don't control them, I should say. Can't even strike a match. Certainly no driving of cars, etc., etc. All right. So as I said, there's 39 prohibitions, and each one of them has in them many, many others. That's Shabbos. No cooking, but we have to eat, and we have to eat warm food. So it's pre-cooked, and it's kept on, not directly over the open flame, but we have what we call in Yiddish a blech, which is a sheet of metal, and that keeps, and we put it over the fire, and the food remains warm. So the food has to be pre-cooked before the Shabbos begins. And then there's all sorts of ways of how to prepare a glass of tea or coffee and the like. Now, that's Shabbos. That's very restrictive. And it's really difficult not to transgress, at least unintentionally or inadvertently. Very difficult. The person has to really, really study the laws of the Sabbath very, very well, and then they have to be constantly focused to make sure that they don't transgress little things. Just give you an example. If the person has in their drink, they have a cup of water or any drink or wine, and inside there's some particle, anything, a hair, some particle, and they so much as just remove it from there, that is actually a biblical transgression. And it's big. It's called desecrating the Sabbath. It gets really, really detailed. All right. Then the next level would be keeping Yom Tov, the festivals, which are the 3 festivals plus Rosh Hashanah. That means the Sukkos, tabernacles, Pesach, and Shavuos. and then Rosh Hashanah. During those days, so long as they don't coincide with Shabbos, as long as they're any other day of the week, Sunday through Friday, basically what one can't do on Shabbos, he cannot do on the Yom Tov, on the festive days, with the exception of anything which is needed for food, for eating. And it has to be for that day. And it will be beneficial if the person does it on that day as opposed to have prepared it the day before. So, for example, you can't light a fire, but you could leave a fire lit from the day before, and you can cook from scratch, basically. A person can take a raw egg and fry it. Shabbos, that is an absolute desecration of Shabbos. Yom Tov, absolutely permitted, no problem. Person can take flour and water and whatever else, yeast, whatever other ingredients, and they can knead a dough, and they can shape it, and they can put it in the oven and bake themselves the wonderful, delicious Shabbos and Yom Tov special bread called challah. They can do that. They cannot use an electrical mixer. That they can't. They have to knead it the good old-fashioned way by hand. Fine. A person can even slaughter an animal or a chicken because it will taste fresher than having slaughtered it the previous day. So they can go through the whole process of preparing it to be eaten because it's for food for that day. So anything related directly for food, the Jew is allowed to do on Yom Tov. So that really makes it different in a great measure than Shabbos. However, all the other restrictions are still the same. There's no writing, there's no sewing, no building. I mean, basically, it's most of the other ones are still forbidden. The next level, which you cannot compare even, Shabbos and Yom Tov are pretty similar with all this whole exception of what's going on in the kitchen, so to say, that's okay, that's permitted. But other than that, it pretty much is the same. Chol HaMoyed, the intermediate days of Sukkot and of Pesach. Those days are more like regular weekdays where most things are permitted and certain things are forbidden. So the way to put it is Yom Tov, most things are like Shabbos and forbidden, except for those that are permitted. Chol HaMoyed, the intermediate days, most things are permitted with the exception of those that are forbidden. That would be one way to look at it. And then all things in the field and all gardening and farming, all that is forbidden. But otherwise, it's basically permitted. So those are the three types of days as far as restrictions go for a Jew of not doing physical labor. First Shabbos, then Yom Tov, then Chol HaMoyed. Now let's get back to this. Opinion number one. The Ger Toshav, he needs to, quote unquote, keep the Shabbos like a Jew on Chol HaMoyed. Meaning whatever the Jew could do Chol HaMoyed, the Ger Toshav can do on any given Shabbos. Whatever the Jew is to refrain from doing on Chol HaMoyed, the Ger Toshav is to refrain from doing on Shabbos. Opinion number two. It's just like Yom Tov for the Jew. Whatever the Jew can do on Yom Tov, which is not all that much, the Ger Toshav can do on his Shabbos. Whatever the Jew cannot do on Yom Tov, then the Ger Toshav cannot do on Shabbos. Whatever he could. Okay. And we learn this out from the word v'nafesh. All right. The line begins ve'af alpi. We are about 8-9 lines from the bottom of the column. Ve'af alpi, and even though Ger Toshav hu zeh shemekabel olav rak sheva mitzvos bnei noyach. So now he's addressing the obvious question now. He said, wait a second, just a moment. How can you have a Ger Toshav keeping Shabbos to some degree or another? The definition of a Ger Toshav, as we learned previously, is one who formally accepts upon himself to keep the 7 mitzvahs b'nei noyach. And none of them have anything to do with Shabbos. Mikol makoim, nonetheless, kivan shekibel olav sheloi laved avodah zara, since he has accepted upon himself not to worship idols, that is one of, if not the main, mitzvah of the 7 Noachide commandments. So included in the 7 is certainly he accepts upon himself to categorically denounce idolatry. He will not worship anything other than God himself. And then we have an edict, or a rule, an idiom, and that is that one, a Jew, who, God forbid, desecrates the Shabbos, he is compared to one who is an idolater, no less. And we're very, very careful with how we do that. And that has legal ramifications for a Jew. Many legal ramifications. Basically, a Jew that is a non-Shabbos observant Jew, legally and technically, maybe today it's not practically so, but legally, technically, certainly theoretically, he is and falls into the category of an idolater. That's very extreme, that's very scary, and it's very true. So again, a Jew who is breaking many of the laws, many of the commandments he doesn't keep. Terrible, unfortunate. He doesn't keep this mitzvah, that mitzvah, the other mitzvah. For example, he does not keep the dietary laws of kosher. He eats non-kosher. He eats nevela, treifa, non-kosher meat. He eats pork, etc. Terrible. He steals. He's dishonest in business. He cheats people. He sneaks into the bank vault in the middle of the night and takes money. He's a thief. Terrible, terrible. It's a sin. Etc. So long as he does not worship anything other than God, he's not an idolater, and he keeps the Shabbos, he's considered a sinful Jew. He's breaking the law. And depending on what sins he's doing, there are different penalties and different punishments. But he's still considered to be a Jew. Maybe not exactly a law-abiding Jew, maybe not a good Jew, but he's a Jew who has many faults and many imperfections and needs to shape up and needs to repent, but he's a Jew. The exception to that, and the first one is obvious, and that is if he's an idolater. If he worships idols or the stars and constellations or anything other than God, then he has categorically taken himself out of the Jewish religion, out of the Jewish community, and he's no longer considered a kosher Jew. He's not just a sinner. He is out of bounds. And the one sin of desecrating Shabbos is compared to that. Therefore, here's the logic. Since breaking Shabbos, for a Jew, breaking Shabbos is basically equivalent to idolatry, point one, and since, point two, a Ger Toshav is one who categorically, officially accepted upon himself to keep the 7 Noachide laws, which include, of course, not to be an idolater. Therefore, he has an association to Shabbos. And therefore, we can now say he's got to keep Shabbos to this degree, to that degree, but it's not that Shabbos is completely, out of his bounds. We say, oh, Shabbos is a gift that God gave to the Jewish people. Fine, that's true. And no one is saying, at least not so far, that he's got to keep Shabbos like a Jew. But these two opinions that we just mentioned, especially the second one, they're telling us that the Ger Toshav needs to refrain from doing certain melachas on Shabbos, not like a Jew, but like a Jew on Yom Tif or Chol HaMoed. And how does he have a connection to Shabbos? Because of idolatry. Therefore, the verse warned the Ger Toshav about not desecrating the Shabbos. Like we quoted before, the verse that says, V'hager. And then there are those that say, opinion number 3, She'einoi mitzuve klal al shmiras Shabbos, that the Ger Toshav is not commanded at all with regards to the observance of Shabbos. V'oisek Yisrael v'choil, and he is to do on Shabbos exactly as the Jew does on a regular weekday, on a mundane, unholy day. A regular Sunday through Friday that's not Yom Tov and not Chol HaMoed. Whatever malachas a Jew can do, which is everything, so too a Ger Toshav on Shabbos. Ma Yisrael, just as the Jew, Bishar Yemei Sashana, in all the other days of the year, Choyresh v'Zeireya v'Koitzer, he plows and sows and harvests. Af Ger Toshav b'Shabbos Kain, so too the Ger Toshav on Shabbos is the same. V'chein halacha. And that is indeed the final ruling. That is the halacha. So we have extreme opinions. One extreme, he's like Yom Tif for the Jew. The other extreme, nothing to do with Shabbos. There's nothing he cannot do on Shabbos. And in the middle we have the Chol HaMoed opinion. And the halacha is like the third opinion, that he is like a regular weekday for him. Whatever a Jew can do on a regular weekday, which basically we're saying everything and anything, all malacha. Right? So that is a Tanoic dispute. The Kosvu Rishonim. Now, the Rishonim, which are the early commentators on the Talmud, they wrote, Sheladas HaMatirim, that according to those that permit everything, the third opinion, which is what we follow, you now would have the question about with the verse that says V'hager. What is the verse referring to? So that verse that we quoted, that the second opinion quoted as support, that he has to refrain from doing many malachas, that verse was not written Ella kisheoisa Ger Toshav bishvil Yisrael. Only when the Ger Toshav is doing malacha for a Jew. That's the interpretation of the verse. When the verse says that the ger needs to v'nafesh rest, it's referring to the ger Toshav who wants to do malacha for the Jew. That is not allowed. In other words, this verse is a warning for the Jews that a Jew is not permitted on Shabbos to do these forbidden labors through a Ger Toshav. I don't know if any of you have heard the term. I mean, if you hang around a synagogue or a Jewish home long enough, you may be familiar with the term a Shabbos Goy. A Shabbos Goy, going back to the old country, to pre-war Europe, a Shabbos Goy was a non-Jew who hung around the Jewish people, and he was very helpful and very useful on Shabbos, because things that the Jews couldn't do, they would have this non-Jew do for them. And there are many details about that. In the Jewish Code of Law, it addresses it in detail. And it's actually not as simple as many people, including many Shabbos observant Jews, think. I'm afraid that some people may be misusing or abusing this concept. There are times and ways that a Jew can benefit from work that's done by a non-Jew, but it's not so simple. As far as the Ger Toshav, though, if he's a Ger Toshav, no. Even things that a regular goy, a regular non-Jew, a ben noyach, could do for the Jew, a Ger Toshav cannot, and the Jew can't have it done for him on Shabbos through the Ger Toshav. Afal pi, even though this Ger Toshav is not acquired to the Jew, he's not his property as a slave would be. We've mentioned previously, Evet Kena'ani, that is a non-Jewish servant, a slave, that is owned by a Jew. And that Evet Kena'ani has many requirements like a Jew. And he's actually, have to be careful how you say it, I don't want to say he's a partial Jew, but he's sort of in the process. And if at the end he becomes Jewish, he need not go through the full conversion because part of that was done to make him an Eved in the first place. He pretty much has to keep all of the mitzvahs, all the commandments that a Jewish woman has to keep. She's exempt from a whole bunch of commandments. Those are the ones that he's exempt from. All the rest he's got to keep like a Jew. So, that Eved, I can understand that a Jew can't have his servant, his non-Jewish servant, slave rather, do melacha for him. But the Ger Toshav is an independent individual. Again, to very briefly remind ourselves what is the definition of a Ger Toshav, as we discussed at length when we first started this section here. In Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, in the time where they had the Yovel, the Jubilee year, when all the Jewish people lived in Eretz Yisrael, and we had the court system of the Sanhedrin, if a non-Jew wanted residence in Eretz Yisrael, he wanted to live there, in certain conditions and with restrictions, we can grant that to him. Normally, the Jewish people cannot grant residence to a non-Jew. Non-Jews have no right to live in Eretz Yisrael. You cannot rent space to them. However, if the non-Jew takes upon himself, in front of a Jewish court, a formal acceptance to keep and adhere to the 7 nullify commandments, he then becomes and has the status of Ger Toshav. And then we are commanded to support him, help him financially and whatever else he needs. And he's treated very much, in many ways, like a fellow Jew. Again, there are certain restrictions. He can't just live anywhere he wants, but we grant him a place to live in Eretz Yisrael. He's part of the community, in a sense. He's not owned by any Jew. He's not an Eved. He's an independent Ger Toshav. So now, that Ger Toshav is, according to what these Rishonim are saying, is what the verse is referring to when it says, and your Ger, the Ger, needs to refrain from doing work on Shabbos. Meaning, the Jew can't have him do any melacha for the Jew. The Jew can't benefit from the Ger Toshav doing melacha. The Ger Toshav can certainly do things for himself. He can do all 39 melachas plus. He can do everything that a Jew can do on a regular weekday. so long as it's for himself. And therefore, the whole argument that we just went through of the Tanoim, the three opinions, they're not arguing, Ella, rather, when the Ger Toshav is doing it for himself. So one opinion says, no, it's like Yom Tif. The other opinion says, it's like Chol Hamoed. And the third opinion, which is what we follow, it's like a regular weekday. That's all with regards to the Ger Toshav doing malacha for himself. And it's not that the Torah forbids him to do malacha. The Torah is not speaking to the Ger Toshav. That verse of Shabbos, when it mentions the Ger, it's not addressing the Ger, so to say, in second person. It's talking to the Jewish people. It's telling us that we're not allowed to, quote unquote, use the Ger Toshav for our malacha to get done. Even though, when it comes to telling a non-Jew, a Nachri, that's the term we use for a regular generic non-Jew, telling a non-Jew directly, ordering him, requesting of a non-Jew to do a malacha for a Jew, that is not at all biblically forbidden, ever. It is rabbinically forbidden. A Jew is not allowed to tell a non-Jew, I would like you to please go do this and this for me. If it's Shabbos, and it's a malacha, and I want him to do it for me, I cannot tell him to do it. I can't even tell him to do it before Shabbos. Tuesday morning, I can't tell him, by the way, it's going to be Saturday, and on Saturday, my Shabbos, I can't tell you anything because I'm telling you now, please make sure to whatever. No, can't tell him to do that. Can't tell him, I want you to, on Shabbos, build me a shed, or plow my field. Can't do that. Rabbinically speaking, you can't do it. So it's called a shvus. A shvus is a term used for something which is rabbinically forbidden, even though it's biblically permitted. It's one of the many, many things that the rabbis instituted as a safeguard, and they prohibited many, many, many additional things that are biblically permissible. The Ger Toshav, but now when it comes to the Ger Toshav, when the Jew would tell him to do melacha on Shabbos for the Jew, then the Jew is transgressing a biblical prohibition, because that verse is talking about that. That's the whole difference. If a Jew is to tell a non-Jew, a regular Nachri, a regular Goy, then he is transgressing a rabbinic decree. If he tells the Ger Toshav, though, he is then transgressing a biblical outright prohibition. And this is a biblical decree. In other words, that's just the way it is because the verse says so, and that's all. Therefore, even so practically speaking, what would be an example? When it comes to Shabbos, there are several categories of how to deal with someone who is ill. Generally, there's two categories of ill people on Shabbos. One is an ill person whose life is in danger, potential danger. If he's not treated, he can die from his current state. And then there's a person who's ill, who is in no danger. He's in discomfort, he's ill, but in no way will he die from getting no treatment. So, if the Jew is in the first category mentioned, he is ill to the extent that his life is in danger, then every and any Jew has the obligation to, quote-unquote, break the Shabbos. in order to save his life, even though it's only a potential, but because he is sick to an extent that his life is in danger, whatever needs to be done has to be done. Okay? Whatever that entails. But what about the person who's sick, but his life is not in danger? So then, what happens is as follows. Biblically, a Jew can't do anything for him. But now, the rabbis that made the rule, and the decree rather, that a Jew cannot have a non-Jew do a malacha for him on Shabbos, they made an exception. And to begin with, they said, when they made that decree, that it does not apply to someone who is ill. So someone who is in the category of being ill, whose life is not in danger, then a Jew is permitted to tell a non-Jew to do malacha. So that would be any non-Jew. But through a Ger Toshav would be forbidden. Can't tell a Ger Toshav to do it. So there's a Jew who is ill, whose life is not in danger. So now, we would like to do some type of a melacha to help this fellow out. Whether it's to turn on or turn off the light in the room, whether it's to take some medicine and crush it, to crush the pills, whether it's to drive him to a hospital, whatever it may be. The Jew cannot do it. The Jew can instruct the non-Jew to do it. The Jew cannot instruct the Ger Toshav to do it. Because Ger Toshav is biblical. A non-Jew doing or not doing malacha for a Jew is all rabbinic. So they made rules, and they basically said a Jew cannot tell a non-Jew to do malacha, except for when they didn't make that decree. But Ger Toshav, they don't have the power or the authority to say that you could tell a Ger Toshav, because biblically the Ger Toshav cannot do malacha. Again, we're not talking about that it's someone who's ill, whose life is in danger, because then you don't need the Ger Toshav to do it. You don't need the non-Jew to do it. The Jew himself can do it. Because the rabbis only allowed for someone who's ill, whose life is not in danger, they only removed or allowed for their decree, but they did not remove the biblical prohibition. That's all one opinion in the Rishonim. V'yesh oimrim. And then there is another opinion which says, Ger Toshav einoi asur laseis li Yisrael elim kein hu schiroi ulekitoi. Opinion number 2 is saying that when the Torah speaks of the Ger, and we say that a Ger Toshav may not do melacha for the Jew, true, he's not an Eved, that's a different category. He's not his Eved Knani, he's not his slave. He is independent, but he is a hired worker of the Jew. And therefore, there is some stronger bond or connection between the two of them. And according to this opinion, the prohibition for a Ger Toshav to do work on Shabbos is, again, yes, it's only for the Jew. We're going with that all along. There's no such thing. We're not following the other opinions. It's only for the for the Jew, and it's specifically if he is a hired worker for the Jew. For example, he is his sharecropper. He goes to the field and he does the work. That Ger Toshav cannot do work for a Jew. But a regular Ger Toshav was totally independent, like we mentioned before. This opinion says he's just like a regular Nachri, and he could do whatever a regular Nachri can do, which means, rabbinically speaking, he cannot do malacha for a Jew, just like any Nachri can't. And if there's someone who's ill and his life is not in danger, then he could, just like any Nachri could. And then there's a third opinion. Some say, even if he's not his hired worker, and we don't have any type of control over him, or he's not under our jurisdiction, they make the following distinction. Anything which the Jew outright tells him, commands him, orders him to do, that would be forbidden for the Ger Toshav. But if the Ger Toshav on his own is doing it for the Jew, and the Jew did not tell him to do it, mutar, that would be permissible. So the third opinion is saying, again, the Ger Toshav that the verse is talking about, who has to refrain from doing malach on Shabbos. So again, A, it's for the Jew, not for himself. And B, unlike the first two opinions, I mean, it's kind of like the first opinion, but it's only that the Jew can't tell him to do it. First opinion said it's even an independent Ger Toshav, and he can't even do it on his own. The Jew can't benefit from it. The Jew has to stop him. Second opinion says, no, it's not a regular Ger Toshav, it's one who at least is a hired worker for the Jew. And opinion number 3 is saying, no, he's an independent, he's his own person, he does not work for you, but what can he not do for the Jew? Only when the Jew commands him to. But if he does it on his own, that's fine, and that's not what the verse is talking about. V'chein, and likewise, mutar liyisrael loymar loy lasos melacha bishvil atzmoi. The Jew is also permitted to tell the Ger Toshav to do, he could outright tell him, to do melacha on Shabbos for himself, for the Ger Toshav's sake. He could tell the Ger Toshav, go plow your field. Because he's not doing it for the Jew. So the only thing which is forbidden, according to the third opinion, is for the Ger Toshav to do it for the Jew under order of the Jew. Yesh mer Rishonim oimrim, and then there are those Rishonim which say, She'af b'Yom Tiv, that even on Yom Tiv, Asur l'Ger Toshav lasis b'Shvil Yisrael. Not only on Shabbos, but on Yom Tiv as well, that it is forbidden for the Ger Toshav to do melacha for the Jew. Now, this was a nice synopsis of the various different, putting together, synopsizing the whole business of Ger Toshav and Shabbos. And of course the footnotes, as always, reference exactly where it is and where they took it from. But I do want to mention that in the what's known as the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the founder of Chabad Hasidism, the author of the famous book called The Tanya, so he wrote a code of law. After the regular Jewish code of law, he then wrote, so to say, a revised set based on all the opinions and to give a clear ruling. So in the volume of Shabbos, in the regular standard one, it would be volume 2. And this is in the later part of the Shulchan Aruch. There were several stages. So in a latter part, and this is a very lengthy dissertation on chapter 304 of the Shulchan Aruch, which is where it would deal with these laws. So the Alter Rebbe goes on to discuss the status of the Ger Toshav and how that would apply nowadays if you have a hired worker, even though we don't have Ger Toshav nowadays. And it goes on, and at the end, we're missing the end. And that's where the last word printed, it says chaser, missing. So after lots of very, very small, tiny, fine print with a whole discussion, at the end, we're missing the very end. And then, what we've studied once before, there is in Likutei Siches, this is the talks of the current Rebbe, Melech HaMoshiach, volume 31, page 119, the second talk for the Torah portion of Mishpatim. He addresses this issue that we're talking about based on the Rambam, Maimonides, and the Alter Rebbe. And it's discussed over here, these three opinions that we brought down with regards to whether he's like Yom Tov or Chol HaMoed or a regular weekday, and so forth. And then again, what would that mean, practically speaking, nowadays? So I do think that you can actually hear this class. It's only available in audio. At that time, we were not yet videotaping. So you can get it if you look it up. You've got to look up something, 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 slash, something, 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 whatever. Chicago B'nai Noach, about the Shabbos, the Ger Toshav and Shabbos. And I know there's been much discussion and controversy about this lately, particularly by an individual or several individuals who have written and spoken about this. There's a lot to be said, and pretty much without getting into it again and rehashing the whole thing, what we just learned over here is the synopsis of it. And for the time being, let's just say that since there is no Ger Toshav nowadays, for the most part, it's theoretical. And although there are those that want to make the argument that if you have a non-Jew today who categorically is keeping the 7 mitzvahs, it's not his problem or his fault that we don't have the Jubilee year and that we're not in the land of Israel and that the Jewish community can't accept him as a Ger Toshav. But on his own, he says, I'm ready to accept it formally if you want. I'll declare that in front of a Jewish court of 3 or 23 or whatever you want. And he keeps the 7 mitzvahs, and we know that he does. So some want to make the argument that such a person we should deal with and treat differently when it comes to Shabbos. And that would mean that many of you out there would not be a good Shabbos Goy, because the Shabbos Goy is clearly doing things for a Jew, and then you get into the dispute of the Rishonim, that if you didn't tell him to do it, is that okay, or is it still not good? As long as he's doing it for a Jew, do you have to stop him, and so forth. Okay, then, with regards to an Eved, again, the slave, the Eved Knani, who did not get circumcised and did not immerse himself in the mikveh, but they did accept upon themselves the Shev Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. What about them? So, he says, for that, you have to further research under the entry called Eved Knani. That brings us now to the 6th part. And that is B'avodah Zara v'yenoi, with regards to idolatry and his wine. Ger Toshav, einoi mevatel avodah zara. When it comes to avodah zara, to idol worship. So there are many, many, many details. Basically, in order to make something no longer forbidden for a Jew to benefit from it, if something was worshipped, so then the Jew can't benefit from it. If it's something which is owned by someone, if people worship the sun, for example, that doesn't mean the Jews can't benefit from the sun. But if someone worships anything of theirs, a rock that the person owns, anything, so then that became avodah zarah, and it's forbidden for a Jew to derive any benefit from it until it is canceled, it is nullified. Now, who can nullify it? It has to be the idolater. A non-Jew who's an idolater can nullify it and say, oh, I don't worship it, it's nonsense, it's not, and it has no powers, and so forth. Okay, so then that undid, and then you can benefit from it. A Ger Toshav cannot undo avodah zarah. Why not? Shein mevatel avodah zarah, let me show you avodah zarah, because the only one who can denounce or undo avodah zarah is one who worships avodah zarah. But one who does not worship avodah zarah, ein bitul bitul. So his nullification doesn't count. And since the Ger Toshav categorically denounces avodah zarah, and he is by no means an idolater, therefore he cannot nullify avodah zarah. But however, there are those that say that a Ger Toshav can. And according to that opinion, the reason would be because they claim, this opinion maintains, that even a Jew really, biblically, could cancel out avodah zarah. But it's a decree that he can't because it has to be a non-Jew. Okay, so when the rabbis made that decree, they did not take it to the extent and say that a Ger Toshav cannot. So they left it in its original state. Be that as it may. One thing is for sure. A Ger Toshav is not an oived avodah zarah. A Ger Toshav is not an idolater, categorically. Bottom of page of side column, Reish Tzadik Ches, 298. Mikivan sheger Toshav ein oived avodah zarah. Since the Ger Toshav is not worship avodah zarah, he worships nothing other than God. Lachein, therefore, Bidinim atluyim b'avodah zarah, in all the Torah laws that are dependent and associated with avodah zarah, ein dinoi kenachri. The Ger Toshav is not considered. He does not have the status of a nachri, of a non-Jew. Ulefichach, and therefore, afilu lahasoivrim she'asu lekabel shvua me'anachri. Even according to those opinions which maintain that it is forbidden to accept an oath from a non-Jew. Mishum leishom al picha. And they base it on a verse that says that it should not be heard through you. So we're concerned and we're afraid that, being that when people take a serious oath, they swear by God or by something which they truly hold to be divinity, or the like. Therefore, we're afraid that if a non-Jew is going to make an oath, he will do so in his God, lowercase g. And therefore, not allowed. But even according to that opinion, that it's forbidden to accept an oath from a non-Jew because of that concern, they agree that a Ger Toshav is not a problem. We allow the Ger Toshav to make an oath, and we're not concerned because he would never swear by anything other than God Almighty. Because he would never, he's not worshipping avodah zarah, and therefore he would never swear with any other name other than capital G -D. And likewise, we have a rule we have a mitzvah, and that is the following law. If a Jewish man has relations, cohabits with a non-Jewish woman, so it's forbidden, it's a sin, it's not a capital offense. And the Jewish court really can't do anything to him. However, it's a very unique law, and it applies in very few cases. This is one of them where it does. Those that are truly zealous people, those Jews that are zealous, they are to kill him on the spot with many conditions. It has to be during the act, etc. So, that's a Jewish man having relations with a non-Jewish woman or girl. On the spot, kanoim, those that are zealous, and you may recall, if you know your Chumash, if you know the Bible well, there is clearly such an episode in the written Torah with Zimri is his name. He was the leader of the tribe of Shimon, and he was with a Midianite. Her name was Kazbi Bastur. And Pinchas, the grandson of Aaron HaKoyen, Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, went running over to Moses, and he asks him, what do we do? Look what's happening. And at that moment, Moses forgot the halacha, the law, and Pinchas reminded him, you taught us that in such a case, those that are zealous are to kill him. And Moshe told his great-nephew, Pinchas, then go ahead. Since you remembered, you must be the zealous one. And the rabbis use an expression that the one who reads the edict or the document should be the one to see it through, to take it out, to execute it. And so he did, on the spot. And many, many miracles happened. And the Talmud goes through so many miracles that happened. Okay. If a Jew is committing the sin of having relations with the daughter of a Ger Toshav, 100% not Jewish. It's a sin. Wouldn't apply. Because it only applies to those that are idolaters. The only thing is that the Jewish court would beat that person after the act. Makas Mardus is basically rabbinic lashes or rabbinic strikings. See, biblically, there's a long list of prohibitions that the penalty is 39 lashes, where they use a whip and the person would get whipped. That's a biblical punishment. However, if the person doesn't get the lashes, then the Jewish court has a right to punish the person as they see fit, when they see fit, by hitting him with a stick, not with a whip, and as much as they think is necessary. So it's pretty much up to their own discretion. Same thing in this case. If a Jewish man has relations with the daughter of a Ger Toshav, Kanoyim may not do anything to him. They cannot kill him. But the court will administer these strikings. Okay, the next part, within this part, is going to be talking about the wine. And that's, again, very important, very practical, even nowadays, but again, even though we don't have a Ger Toshav. Because in general, we know that wine is something which is used for sacrilegious purposes, and wine was used for sacrifices, traditionally pouring it over the altar by many, many religions. And when they're bringing a sacrifice to their gods, they pour wine, and therefore wine is so much associated with sacrifice. Therefore, the wine which is touched by a nachri, by a goy, could become non-kosher just by the touch. Nothing else works like that. If a non-Jew touches kosher meat, it's still kosher. If a non-Jew touches kosher milk, it's still kosher. It doesn't contaminate it. If a non-Jew touches kosher bread, it's still kosher. If a non-Jew touches kosher wine, he has contaminated it and disqualified it from consumption for the Jew. And then there's ways around that. Next time you go shopping and you take a look at kosher wine, when you go into a kosher section, look carefully at the label, and you may find that kosher wine has the word mevushal on it. M-E-V, mevushal, which means cooked. And that's a process that they do, because if they do that, then the non-Jew's touch will not contaminate it. But the whole thing is related to Avodah Zarah. Well, then the Ger Toshav shouldn't contaminate it. Well, that's the next piece that we will be, please God, discussing. In the meantime, everyone be well, behave, keep the 7 Noachide commandments, believe, and spread the belief and the faith in one God, and do whatever you can to hasten the complete and full redemption through our righteous Mashiach now.